Have you ever just stopped and wondered how a totally ordinary, decent person, someone you know, maybe even yourself, could end up doing something truly terrible? It's one of the most profound and frankly disturbing questions in psychology. Today, we're diving deep into Philip Zimbardo's famous work, The Lucifer Effect, to really get to the bottom of it. How do good people turn evil?
Right, this is the big one. This is the question that Zimbardo's entire work is built around. Is evil something that's just baked into certain people? Or is it about the situation you put them in? The answer, well, it really challenges our most basic ideas about who we think we are. So, to tackle that question, we've got two main theories on the table. First, there's the one we all know, the bad apple theory. You know, the idea that evil acts are done by people who are just bad. Simple enough. But Zimbardo puts forward a much more unsettling idea, the bad barrel theory. This one says, hey, what if the situation, the barrel itself, is so toxic that it can actually spoil the good apples you put inside it? To really put this bad barrel idea to the test, Zimbardo came up with one of the most famous and, most controversial experiments in modern history, the Stanford Prison Experiment. He got a group of completely normal, healthy college kids and, with the flip of a coin, made half of them prisoners and the other half guards in a mock prison. What happened next was beyond shocking. I mean, just look at how fast everything went downhill. Day one, it's all a bit weird and awkward. The students get arrested as a surprise by real cops, they get processed, and they step into their new roles. By day two, just 24 hours later, the prisoners are already fighting back, and the guards are cracking down hard. By day four, you've got students having serious emotional breakdowns. The whole thing became so poisonous so fast that they had to pull the plug after only 6 of the planned 14 days. And the data they collected from the video cameras, it just spells it out. The guards' behavior went way up in commands, insults, and just straight-up aggression. And the prisoners, after a quick little burst of rebellion, they became more and more passive, more helpless. These roles they were randomly given were literally rewriting their personalities in real time. And this is where it gets really chilling. This is a quote from one of the guards who became known for his sadistic creativity. He's admitting he wasn't just, playing a role. He saw himself as an experimenter, and he was consciously testing the limits of his own cruelty. The situation basically gave him a permission slip to explore a part of himself that he might not have even known was there. Now, from the other side, listen to this. Prisoner 8612, who was the very first person to have a complete breakdown, he makes it so clear it wasn't about the food or the cots. It was the psychological game. It was the feeling of being totally powerless, of being trapped and realizing you had absolutely no way out. That's what broke him. Now, you might be thinking, okay, that's a wild experiment, but it's just an experiment. Well, decades later, Zimbardo watched the exact same dynamics play out for real, on the world stage. The horrific abuse of prisoners at Abu Ghraib by American soldiers was to him not just a case of a few bad apples. It was another tragic, real-world bad barrel. When those photos from Abu Ghraib came out, Zimbardo said he felt this awful, chilling sense of déjà vu. He knew what he was looking at. He saw these smiling, ordinary young men and women torturing prisoners, and it was an absolutely eerie echo of what he had already seen happen in a university basement. And when investigators looked into it, what they found was a textbook definition of a bad barrel. You had soldiers with almost zero supervision, especially on the night shift where most of the abuse happened. Leadership was nowhere to be found, the living conditions were awful, the rules were a mess, and they were under constant threat of attack. Then you throw in these vague orders to soften up prisoners. I mean, you've created a perfect storm for atrocity. And the result of that perfect storm was a total moral collapse, all captured in those infamous trophy photos. The soldiers weren't just committing these acts, they were documenting them, posing and smiling next to their victims like they were big game hunters. It's a terrifying picture of how far good people can fall. Okay, so what is actually going on here? What are the psychological levers that get pulled that allow a situation to completely overwhelm a person? Zimbardo points to a few key forces that are at play. First up is something called de-individuation. Basically, when you put on a uniform, think of the guards' khaki shirts and mirrored sunglasses, you lose a piece of yourself. You stop being you, and you become the role. That anonymity makes you feel way less accountable for what you do. It's a mask, and behind it, a lot of things become possible. Next, and this is a big one, is dehumanization. It's a lot easier to hurt someone if you stop seeing them as a person. So you call them numbers, like they did in the experiment, or you call them detainees or terrorists, like at Abu Ghraib. By stripping people of their humanity with labels, you dismantle the psychological fence that normally stops you from being cruel. And finally, you have the biggest force of all, system power. The system is what actually builds the bad barrel in the first place. It's the higher-ups, the political and military leaders who create the whole situation, who give the official or unofficial permission for these things to happen, usually by saying it's for some greater good, like national security. But here's the thing. The story does not have to end in darkness. Because just as situations can create evil, Zimbardo argues they can also create heroism. And he says heroism isn't some superpower you're born with, it's a choice. It's something ordinary people can do to push back against these powerful forces. So how do we actually do it? How do we resist? Zimbardo says it's a skill you can learn, and he lays out a 10-step program for what he calls building a heroic imagination. The point is, you don't have to be born a hero. You just have to train yourself to be ready to act like one. Let's look at a few of the key steps. These steps are really a kind of toolkit for your own mind. They're all about a few big ideas. First, being self-aware. Admitting when you're wrong, paying attention to social pressures. Second, taking personal responsibility instead of passing the buck. Third, holding on to what makes you, you, to fight that anonymity of the group. And maybe, most importantly, learning to tell the difference between authority you should respect and authority you have a duty to rebel against. And the proof is that heroes are almost always ordinary people. Christina Maslach, who was Zimbardo's girlfriend at the time, she was the outsider who walked in, saw the horror for what it was, and basically forced him to shut the experiment down. Joe Darby was the regular soldier who couldn't live with what he saw and blew the whistle at Abu Ghraib. And even inside the prison experiment, you had prisoners like Sarge and Jerry who did these small, incredible things, refusing an order, sharing a blanket. They resisted. And that brings us to this incredible quote from Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who survived the absolute evil of the Soviet prison camps. The line between good and evil is in the center of every human heart. It's not out there, separating the good guys from the bad guys. That line runs right through the middle of every single one of us. And so, in the end, all of this work leaves us with a really powerful and very personal question. That line is inside of you. The pressures of the situation, the barrel, will always be pushing you one way or the other. So when that moment comes, which way are you going to step?